Cole had spent 12 years serving on deep space vessels. He had seen strange planets and stranger creatures. He had survived battles that killed better soldiers than him, but nothing in his long career prepared him for what his team found on 442b. The planet was supposed to be dead. Initial scans showed no life signs, no energy readings, nothing but rocks and dust stretching across a frozen wasteland. The research vessel Horizon had been passing through the system when their sensors picked up something unusual. A structure, something built by intelligent hands, hidden in a valley where no structure should exist. Captain Lisa Monroe ordered a ground team to investigate, led that team. He picked his 3 best people for the job. Lieutenant Price was his second in command, a sharp woman with steady hands and sharper instincts. Corporal Shaw handled heavy weapons and had a reputation for staying calm when everything went wrong. Dr. Dawson was there, the person had ever met when it came to understanding alien life. They landed their shuttle 2 kilometers from the structure and approached on foot. The ground crunched beneath their boots. The sky above was the color of old bronze, and 2 small moons hung near the horizon like watching eyes. The structure rose from the valley floor like nothing had ever seen. It was black, but not a natural black. This darkness seemed to drink in light, to swallow it and give nothing back. The walls curved in ways that hurt his eyes if he looked too long. Towers reached toward the sky at angles that should have been impossible, yet the building stood firm and solid. Checked her scanner and frowned. I'm getting energy readings from inside, faint but steady. Whatever built this place, they had power sources we don't understand. Raised his pulse rifle and swept the entrance. No movement, no heat signatures. If anyone's home, they're either dead or really good at hiding. Nodded and stepped forward. Stay tight, watch your corners, document everything you can. They entered the structure through an opening that might have been a door. There was no actual door there, just an archway that led into darkness. Their helmet lights cut through the black, revealing corridors that stretched in multiple directions. The walls hummed with a low vibration that felt in his chest. It was like standing inside a sleeping giant. They moved slowly and carefully. Every room they passed contained artifacts they could not identify. Strange machines covered in dust. Containers made from materials their scanners could not analyze. Symbols carved into walls in patterns that repeated and shifted in ways that made his breath catch. "This is old," she whispered. "This is incredibly old. I'm reading carbon traces that suggest this structure has been here for at least 50,000 years. 50,000, repeated. That's before humans figured out how to plant crops. Exactly, said. Whatever species built this place, they were crossing stars while our ancestors were living in caves. Felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold air. He had encountered alien ruins before, remnants of civilizations that had risen and fallen long before humanity reached the stars. But those ruins had always felt distant and dead. This place felt different. This place felt like it was waiting. They reached the heart of the structure after nearly an hour of walking. The central chamber was vast, larger than any room had a right to be inside a building this size. The ceiling vanished into darkness above them. The walls curved inward like the inside of an egg. And in the center of that chamber stood thousands of crystalline vials, each one filled with a silver liquid that glowed with soft inner light. Rushed forward before could stop her. She pulled out her instruments and began scanning, her eyes growing wider with each passing second. This is impossible, she said. The liquid inside these vials, it's not just biological, it's alive. It's reacting to our presence. Look. Looked, the silver liquid in the nearest vials was moving, swirling slowly like something stirring from a long sleep. What is it? Asked. I don't know yet, but it's complex. More complex than anything I've ever analyzed. There are nanoscopic structures inside, machines so small I can barely detect them, and organic compounds that don't match anything in our databases. Shook her head. Whoever made this was thousands of years ahead of us, maybe tens of thousands. Opened his mouth to respond, but the ground shook before he could speak. A low rumble rolled through the structure, sending dust cascading from the walls. His radio crackled with Captain Monroe's voice. "Ground team, we have a problem. Sensors are picking up incoming vessels, a lot of them. They're coming from the dark side of the planet." Blood went cold. "Can you identify them?" There was a pause. When Monroe spoke again, her voice was tight with fear. "It's a fleet, at least 30 ships. They'll be in weapons range within 4 hours." The name hit like a physical blow. The Dominion was the greatest threat in the known galaxy. They were an ancient species, old beyond measuring, and they had spent the last 10,000 years systematically wiping out younger civilizations. Humanity had encountered them twice before. Both encounters ended in slaughter. Entire colonies erased. Thousands of people dead. And now they were here. "Get back to orbit," ordered. "Jump out of the system before they can intercept you." "We're not leaving you behind," Monroe protested. "You don't have a choice. If they catch the horizon, everyone dies. Get out. Send a distress signal. Come back with reinforcements. Rescue is at least 3 days away. You can't survive that long against the—" "We'll figure something out. Just go. That's an order." The radio went silent. Turned to find his team watching him with expressions ranging from fear to grim determination. "What's the plan?" asked quietly. Before could answer, spoke up. She was staring at the inscriptions on the chamber walls, her scanner working to translate the ancient symbols. "There's writing here," she said. "It's in multiple languages, 17 that I can identify, and one of them is English. Broken and strange, but English." "That's impossible," said. "This place is 50,000 years old. English didn't exist 50,000 years ago." "I know, but look," pointed at a section of wall. "They must have encountered humans at some point, or they found samples of our language somewhere, or they could see the future. I don't know, but they left a message for us." Walked over to stand beside her. The symbols on the wall shifted in his vision, and suddenly he could read them. Words formed in his mind, clear and sharp. "For those who would stand against the darkness, we leave our final gift. Our bodies failed, but our essence remains. Drink and become what we could not. Drink and end the forever." Looked at the thousands of glowing vials surrounding them. He looked at his team. He looked at the walls of a structure built by a species that had died 50,000 years ago, leaving behind a message and a choice. Outside they were coming, and humanity's survival might depend on what happened in this chamber. The landing ships touched down as the bronze sky began to darken. Watched through a crack in the structure's outer wall as hundreds of armored figures poured out of their vessels. They were tall, nearly 8 feet each, covered in natural armor that looked like black stone. Their eyes glowed with faint red light, and they carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Had seen footage of attacks. He knew what those weapons could do. A single shot could punch through starship armor. A sustained blast could level a building. And there were hundreds of soldiers out there, with more arriving every minute. "They're setting up a perimeter," reported from her position near the main entrance. "I count 300 ground troops so far, heavy weapons emplacements going up on the ridge, and I'm seeing what looks like siege equipment." Had positioned himself at a secondary entrance, his pulse rifle ready. "They're not taking chances. Whatever's in this structure, they want it bad." Turn 2. She had been working non-stop since they found the chamber, trying to understand the silver liquid in those vials. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "I've finished my initial analysis," she said, "and I need you to understand what we're dealing with here." Walked over to her. "Tell me." Held up one of the crystalline vials. The silver liquid inside swirled gently, responding to her touch. "This is not medicine. This is not an enhancement drug. This is a complete biological rewrite." She met his eyes. The nanoscopic machines inside this liquid are designed to break down every cell in the human body and rebuild them from scratch. New DNA, new cellular structure, new neural pathways. Everything that makes you biologically human would be replaced. Replaced with what? Something better, faster, stronger. The scans suggest enhanced strength, possibly 100 times normal human levels, accelerated healing, extended, maybe indefinite, sensory upgrades that would let you see heat, hear radio waves, perceive things no human could perceive, and some kind of adaptive response system that would make you increasingly resistant to whatever tries to harm you. Stared at the vial. That sounds like exactly what we need right now. You're not listening. His voice sharpened. The process is irreversible. Once the transformation begins, there's no going back. Your human DNA will be gone forever. Your cells won't be human cells anymore. You might look the same on the outside mostly, but inside you would be something entirely different, something new, something that has never existed before. She paused and took a deep breath. Drink this and you'll never be human again, not in any way that science can measure. You'll be a hybrid of human and whatever the architects were. You'll live while everyone you know grows old and dies. You'll exist as a reminder of a species that went extinct 50,000 years ago, and we have no idea how it will affect your mind. Your memories might stay intact. Your personality might survive, but there's no guarantee. The chamber fell silent. Could hear the distant sounds of forces organizing outside. He could hear his own heartbeat, steady and human, pumping blood through a body that had been born on Earth and had traveled across the stars. He thought about his life. He thought about the people he had loved and lost. He thought about Earth, that small blue world spinning in the darkness, home to 8 billion people who had no idea their species was considered a target for extermination. How long until they breach the structure? He asked. 4 hours, called out. Maybe 5 if we can slow them down at the entrances. And rescue. His voice was grim. 3 days minimum, probably longer. Looked at his team. Was 26 years old. She had a man waiting for her back on Earth, a man who had asked her to marry him 3 months ago. She had said yes. She kept the ring in a case in her quarters, too afraid of losing it to wear it on missions. Had twin daughters 7 years old. They sent him video messages every week, telling him about school and friends and the cat they had adopted. Had spent her entire adult life studying alien life, dedicating herself to understanding the universe's endless diversity. They all had reasons to live. They all had people waiting for them. And none of them would survive the next 4 hours without a miracle. Picked up a vial. What about the rest of these? He asked. Could we all take them? Shook her head. I don't know. The transformation might require specific genetic markers. It might kill anyone who isn't compatible. The architects left instructions for 1 person to drink, not 4. If we all try, we might all die. Then I'll be the one. No, stepped forward. You're our commanding officer. If anyone should take that risk, it should be me. It should be me, said. I'm the heaviest hitter we have. Enhanced strength would do the most good in my hands. Neither of you is taking it, said firmly. I'm the one responsible for this team. I'm the one who led us into this situation, and I'm the one who's going to get us out. He looked at. You said there's no guarantee my mind will survive intact. What did the architects say about that? Consulted her translations. They said consciousness remains. The self continues. They described it as dying and being reborn at the same time. Your body ends, but your soul goes on in a new vessel. That's poetic. They were poets once, according to these walls, artists and scientists and dreamers. Then they came and they became warriors. They fought for 3,000 years before their species finally died out. And in their last days they created this. A weapon, a legacy, a gift for whoever came after them. Turned the vial in his hands. The liquid seemed to pulse with inner light, almost like it knew what was coming. If I do this, can I buy you enough time to reach the shuttle? Maybe, said. If you can draw their attention, keep them focused on you instead of us, we might be able to slip out through the eastern tunnels. Then that's the plan. Looked at each of them in turn. You get to the shuttle, you get off this planet, you tell humanity what we found here. And what about you? Asked. Smiled, but there was no humor in it. I'll hold the line, however long it takes. Grabbed his arm. Her fingers were cold even through his suit. Please, I need you to understand what you're choosing. This isn't a sacrifice you can take back. This isn't a door you can walk back through. If you drink that liquid, the Cole who grew up on Earth, who joined the Space Corps, who led this team through a dozen missions, that man will die. Something else will stand up in his place. Something that carries his memories but exists in a body that has never been human. Met her eyes. Will that something still care about protecting people? Hesitated. The architects cared. Until their last breath they cared. Everything they built, everything they sacrificed, it was all to give someone else a chance against the darkness. Then maybe that's what matters, raised the vial. Not what I am, but what I choose to protect. He drank before anyone could stop him. The liquid tasted like lightning and starlight, and something his mind could not name. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then his body caught fire. Cole screamed. The sound tore from his throat without permission, raw and desperate, and filled with agony beyond anything he had ever imagined. He collapsed to the floor of the ancient chamber, his body convulsing as the silver liquid began its work. Every nerve ending lit up with pain. Every cell in his body began to tear itself apart. Rushed to his side but could do nothing. Shouted his name. Moved toward him but stopped when his body began to glow with the same silver light that had filled the vial. The transformation was violent. Could feel his bones breaking and reforming, his muscles shredding themselves and knitting back together in new patterns. His heart stopped beating for 10 terrible seconds, then started again with a rhythm that was steady and mechanical and completely inhuman. His eyes burned as new structures grew behind them, layers of perception being added to senses that had served humanity for millions of years. Through the agony, memories flooded his mind, memories that were not his own. He saw a world with 3 suns hanging in a purple sky. He saw cities that floated among the clouds, connected by bridges of crystallized light. He saw beings that looked almost human but with skin that shimmered like oil on water and eyes that held depths no camera could capture. The architects. He was seeing the architects in their prime, their civilization at its height. They were artists who painted with gravity and sculptors who shaped molecules. They were scientists who had mapped the structure of reality itself, and philosophers who had spent centuries pondering the meaning of consciousness. They had built wonders that description and dreamed dreams that stretched across the stars. Then the came. Saw the first contact. The architects had welcomed thee as fellow travelers in the cosmos, eager to share knowledge and culture with another advanced species. But they had not come to share. They had come to judge. They believed in hierarchy. They believed the strong had the right to rule, and the weak had the obligation to serve or die. They measured strength in conquest and weakness in compassion, and they had decided, in their cold and ancient wisdom, that younger species were threats to be eliminated before they could grow strong enough to challenge the dominion. The architects had refused to submit. Watched 3,000 years of war compress into moments of memory. He saw architect worlds burn. He saw their floating cities fall from the skies. He saw their people die by the billions, fighting with every tool and weapon they could create, but never enough. Never enough to stop the. In the end, only a handful of architects remained. They gathered on a dying world, surrounded by the ruins of their civilization, and made one final choice. They could not defeat the. Their bodies were too fragile, they're too short, but they could leave something behind. A gift, a weapon, a way for some other species to succeed where they had failed. They poured everything into the silver liquid, their knowledge, their strength, their rage, their hope. Then they scattered the vials across the galaxy and waited to die. They had been waiting for 50,000 years. Now Cole carried their legacy in his transformed blood. The pain faded slowly. The silver glow dimmed until it vanished entirely. Opened his eyes and saw the world in ways he had never seen before. He could perceive heat signatures through the stone walls. He could hear the heartbeats of his team members standing 10 feet away. He could feel the electromagnetic field of the ancient structure humming around him like a living organism. Colors he had no names for danced at the edges of his vision, spectrums that human eyes were never designed to see. He stood up. The movement was smooth and precise, his body responding with fluid grace that felt both alien and natural. He looked at his hands. They still appeared human, 5 fingers on each palm, but he could feel the power coiled beneath the skin. Power that could crush stone. Power that could bend metal. Power that could fight the... was staring at him with an expression caught between wonder and terror. "Can you hear me? Can you understand what I'm saying?" His voice came out strange when he spoke. It had layers now, harmonics that resonated in frequencies beyond normal human hearing. "I hear everything. I understand everything. The architects gave me their knowledge along with their strength. I know things now, things about the universe, things about the... things that would take human scientists centuries to discover." "Your eyes," whispered. "They're silver just like the liquid." Nodded. He could feel the difference in his own reflection, sensed through the ambient light bouncing off the chamber walls. His eyes had become mirrors that showed nothing of what lay behind them. "How do you feel?" asked carefully, his hand resting on his weapon. Considered the question. How did he feel? His human emotions were still there, but they came through filters now. Fear was present but manageable. Anger existed but under control. Love remained, unchanged and perhaps even stronger than before. He still cared about his team. He still wanted to protect humanity. He still remembered who he was and why he had made this choice. But underneath all of that, something new pulsed through his consciousness. The accumulated grief of the architects, stored for 50,000 years and now flowing through his transformed cells. They had watched their children die. They had watched their worlds burn. They had watched their entire species fade into extinction, unable to stop the darkness that consumed them. And they were angry. Felt that anger now, not as his own but as a gift from the dead. A fire that would never burn out. A fury directed at the species that had murdered billions and called it necessary. That had killed without conscience for 10,000 years. They had ended civilizations for the crime of existing. They had declared themselves judges of who deserved to live and who deserved to die. They were going to learn what a mistake that was. "I feel ready," said. "Get to the shuttle, use the eastern tunnels like we planned. I'll draw their attention." "You can't fight all of them," protested. "There are hundreds." "Then I'll fight hundreds." "Please," stepped forward. "We don't know the limits of what you've become. We don't know if you can actually survive what's out there. Let us help you." Looked at her with silver eyes that saw more than any human gaze ever could. He saw the heat of her concern, the electrical patterns of fear in her nervous system, the subtle tremors in her muscles that betrayed how frightened she truly was. But he also saw something else. He saw courage. He saw determination. He saw the same spark that had driven the architects to create their final gift instead of giving up. "The best way you can help me is by surviving," he said. "Tell humanity what happened here. Tell them about the architects. Tell them what I became. And tell them they are not as invincible as they think." He turned toward the chamber exit, toward the corridors that led to the structure's outer walls, toward the army waiting outside. Called out, "For what it's worth, you're still our commander. Whatever you are now, that hasn't changed." Paused at the threshold. A smile crossed his face, strange on features that were no longer quite human. "Thank you, take care of them, get everyone home." Then he walked into the darkness, leaving his humanity behind with every step. They were waiting. They would not be waiting much longer. The first squad encountered in the outer corridor of the ancient structure. There were 7 of them, each one a veteran of 100 campaigns against species the galaxy had already forgotten. They stood 8 feet tall and wore armor that had been grown from their own bodies, black and hard as stone. Their weapons hummed with plasma energy capable of burning through starship hulls. They opened fire the moment they saw him. Moved. Time seemed to stretch as his enhanced perception kicked in. He could see the plasma bolts leaving their weapons, could track their trajectories through the air, could calculate exactly where each one would land. His new body responded with speed that physics, carrying him between the bolts like water flowing around rocks. He reached the first soldier before the alien could fire a second shot. His hand, still human in appearance, struck the creature's armored chest with force that cracked the black plating like glass. The flew backward and crashed through the corridor wall. The remaining 6 attacked as one. They were trained and disciplined, coordinating their fire to create overlapping fields of destruction, but was no longer bound by human limitations. He ducked under one bolt and twisted past another. He grabbed a soldier's weapon and crushed it in his grip, then used the soldier himself as a shield against incoming fire. 2 more fell to strikes that moved faster than eyes could follow. 7 soldiers, 4 seconds, stood among the broken bodies and felt nothing resembling remorse. The architect's memories showed him what this species had done. World after world, civilization after civilization, all ground to dust under boots. The aliens called it pruning. They believed younger species were weeds that would eventually grow strong enough to threaten their dominion. So they cut those weeds down early, before they could spread. Humanity was scheduled to be pruned within the next century. That schedule was about to change. Moved deeper into the lines, he emerged from the structure's main entrance into a killing field. Hundreds of soldiers had established positions across the valley floor. Heavy weapon emplacements pointed toward every possible exit. Aerial drones circled overhead, sensors sweeping for targets. Every sensor locked onto the moment he appeared. "Identify yourself," a voice boomed through translator speakers. "You are in territory. Surrender and submit to judgment." Looked at the army before him. He could see the fear beginning to spread among their ranks. The soldiers who had entered the structure were not responding to communications. Something had happened inside, something that killed 7 warriors in seconds. "My name is Cole," he said. His voice carried across the valley without effort, projected by vocal cords that were no longer limited to human capabilities. "I was human once. I served a species you consider insignificant, a species you plan to exterminate." He began walking toward the line. "The architects of this structure tried to stop you 50,000 years ago. They failed. Their entire civilization died fighting your empire, but before they died they left something behind. A gift, a weapon, a way to create something you've never faced before." The soldiers opened fire. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds and energy beams converged on his position. The air around him turned white with heat. Stone melted. Metal vaporized. The ground became glass beneath his feet. And kept walking. His body adapted to each attack in real time. The first plasma bolt burned, but the second burned less, and the third barely singed his skin. His cells analyzed each weapon and developed countermeasures at speeds that biological logic. By the time he reached the first defensive line, he was walking through concentrated fire that could level a building without slowing down. The melee was brutal, moved among the soldiers like a storm given form. He was not just stronger than them. He was faster, more precise, more aware of every movement on the battlefield. Where they saw one enemy, he saw 1,000 weaknesses in their formation. Where they aimed weapons, he was already somewhere else. Bodies fell, armor cracked, weapons shattered. The commander, a massive warrior named or who had led campaigns across 100 worlds, finally stepped forward to face this impossible threat. He was the largest of his kind that had seen, covered in scars that spoke of battles won through centuries of conquest. His weapon was ancient, a blade forged from materials that predated most species in the galaxy. "What are you?" or demanded, his translator rendering the words in flat English. Paused. In the distance he could hear the shuttle lifting off, and were escaping. The distraction was working. "I used to be human," said, "a member of a species you marked for extermination, a species you dismissed as too young and too weak to matter." Or raised his blade. "You are an abomination, the architect's final heresy. Their kind was judged and found wanting. They had no right to create successors." "They had every right. They saw what you really are, or, not judges, not guardians of galactic order, just murderers who kill because you can." Silver eyes reflected the burning landscape around them. "You've been slaughtering the innocent for 10,000 years. That stops now." Or attacked with speed that had killed 1,000 enemies. His blade sang through the air, aimed at its throat. Caught it with his bare hand. The metal, forged in the heart of a dying star, crumbled against his grip. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Or fought with everything his ancient species had taught him. He used weapons and tactics refined over of conquest. He called in orbital strikes that turned the surrounding terrain into molten ruin. He summoned every soldier under his command to converge on a single target. It was not enough. When the dust settled and the fires burned low, Cole stood alone in a field of broken armor and shattered weapons. His hands were steady. His breath came easy. His heart beat with mechanical precision that would never tire, never falter, never stop. He looked up at the sky where the fleet still orbited. He knew they were watching. He knew their sensors were recording everything that had happened. He wanted them to see. "Send your fleet," he said, his voice projected upward with power that carried beyond the atmosphere. "Send your armies, send everything you have. It won't be enough. The architect's gift is now humanity's inheritance, and humanity will not go quietly into the dark like the others. We will fight, we will survive, and we will remember." The fleet began to withdraw. For the first time in recorded history, vessels were retreating from a single enemy. Ships that had conquered worlds and exterminated civilizations turned and fled from a planet where one transformed human stood among the ruins of their invasion force. Watch them go. He thought about his team, safely aboard the shuttle and racing toward rescue. He thought about Earth, spinning peacefully in a distant solar system, its people unaware of how close they had come to extinction. He thought about the architects, dead for 50,000 years but somehow still fighting through him. He thought about what he had lost, his humanity, his mortality, his place among the species that had raised him. He thought about what he had gained, the power to protect, the strength to fight back, the chance to ensure that they would never again exterminate a species without consequence. The trade seemed fair. Turned and walked back into the ancient structure. There were thousands of vials still waiting in that central chamber, thousands of potential soldiers in the war against the darkness. Humanity was going to need them all. 3 months after the battle on 442b, Cole stood before the United Earth Council. The Great Chamber was the largest meeting hall humanity had ever built. It rose in curved tiers around a central platform, every seat filled with officials, military commanders, scientists, diplomats, and journalists from every nation on Earth. Cameras recorded every angle. Billions of people watched through live feeds that reached across the solar system and beyond. Everyone wanted to see the man who had turned back an invasion force single-handedly. Everyone wanted to know what he had become. Stood alone on the central platform. He wore a simple uniform, no medals or decorations, just the basic gray of a Space Corps officer. His hands rested at his sides. His silver eyes reflected the lights overhead without giving away anything of what lay behind them. He looked human. That was what unsettled people the most. He looked like any other man in his 40s, strong and weathered by years of service, with a face that could have belonged to a farmer or a soldier or a teacher. But everyone in that chamber knew what that ordinary appearance concealed. Dr. Dawson had spent the entire journey back to Earth studying transformed physiology. Her reports had been classified at the highest level, shared only with the council and a handful of scientists who could be trusted. But the summary had leaked, as summaries always did. Cole was no longer biologically human. His DNA had been completely rewritten. His cells operated on principles that human science could not explain. His brain contained structures that had never existed in any natural organism. By every measurement available to modern medicine, he was an alien wearing human skin. The council chairman, a tired woman named Hayes, opened the session with a question that had been on everyone's minds since the news first broke. "Mr. Cole, can you tell us in your own words what you are?" Considered the question. He could hear the heartbeats of everyone in the chamber, hundreds of rhythms beating at different speeds. He could sense their fear, their curiosity, their hope, their doubt. He could perceive the electromagnetic signatures of the recording equipment, the communication signals bouncing between satellites overhead, the subtle vibrations of the building settling into its foundations. He was aware of everything, and for the first time in 3 months, he had to put that awareness into words. "I am what remains of Cole," he said. His voice filled the chamber without effort. "I carry his memories, his values, his love for the people and the world that shaped him. But the body that houses those things is no longer human. It was rebuilt by technology 50,000 years old, created by a species that died fighting the same enemy we now face." He paused, letting the words settle. "I am not your enemy. I am not your weapon. I am a soldier who made a choice in a moment when there was no other option. I drank the architect's gift to save my team and to prove that humanity would not go quietly into extinction, and I would make that choice again." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Hayes raised her hand for silence. "There are those who believe you should be contained," she said carefully. "Studied, controlled. There are fears about what you might do, what you might become if left to your own devices." "I understand those fears," met her eyes without flinching. "I am stronger than anything humanity has ever created. I am faster, more durable, more dangerous. If I chose to use these gifts for harm, there is very little you could do to stop me." The chamber grew very quiet. "But I did not sacrifice my humanity to become a monster. I sacrificed it to become a shield. They have spent 10,000 years killing without consequence. They have exterminated hundreds of species, each one as deserving of existence as humanity. They do this not because they have to, but because they believe they have the right." Turned slowly, addressing the entire room. "That ends now. The architects left their gift in a vault on a forgotten world, waiting for someone desperate enough or brave enough to claim it. They left instructions for others to follow. There are thousands more vials in that chamber, thousands of potential transformations. I am the first, but I do not have to be the last." The implications hit the chamber like a wave. Thousands of beings thousands of transformed soldiers, fast and strong and nearly invincible. "You're talking about building an army," a general said from the military section. "I am talking about giving humanity a choice." His voice softened. "I will not force anyone to drink from those vials. The cost is too high to impose on anyone unwilling to pay it. But for those who choose to stand, who choose to sacrifice what I sacrificed, there is now a way to fight back against the darkness." An old scientist near the front of the chamber spoke up. "You said the transformation is irreversible, that anyone who drinks will never be human again. How can you ask people to make that choice?" Thought about the question. He thought about asking him the same thing in her lab aboard the rescue ship, while machines tried to map his new biology and found only mysteries. "Do you regret it?" she had asked, her voice quiet in the sterile silence. He had taken a long time to answer. "I think about who I was," he had said finally. "I remember being human, the taste of coffee in the morning, the feeling of sunlight on my face, the way my heart used to race when I was afraid." He had looked at his hands, ordinary in appearance but hiding in human power. "I cannot feel those things the same way anymore. The transformation changed how I experience everything." "But do you regret it?" The architects gave up everything to stop their bodies, their world, their entire species. They poured their dying essence into those vials, hoping someone would be brave or desperate enough to drink. He had met her eyes. "How could I let that sacrifice mean nothing? How could I let daughters grow up in a galaxy where they would eventually come for Earth?" Now, standing before the council, spoke the same truth. Humanity is not just biology. It is not just DNA or cellular structure. It is what we choose to protect, what we are willing to sacrifice, what we refuse to let die. He looked at the faces watching him, the fear and wonder and hope mixed together in every expression. "I am not human anymore, but I carry humanity with me, in my memories, in my values, in my love for a species that raised me and gave me reasons to fight." He raised his hand, palm open, showing them the ordinary human skin that hid so much power beneath. They have spent ages believing that strength makes them superior, that the powerful have the right to exterminate the weak. They never understood what makes a species truly dangerous. His silver eyes swept the chamber. "It is not strength. It is not technology. It is the willingness to give up everything, even yourself, to protect what matters." He lowered his hand. "I am not human anymore, but I will spend whatever existence I have left making sure and anyone else who threatens the innocent learns to fear what humanity can become when pushed to the edge." The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly, Hayes began to applaud. Others joined her. The sound built and grew until it echoed off the walls like thunder, a wave of acknowledgement for the man who had given up his humanity to save it. Cole stood alone on the platform, transformed and eternal, carrying the hope of two species in a body that would never tire. He was not human anymore. But standing there, surrounded by the people he had sacrificed everything to protect, feeling their gratitude wash over him like warm light, he had never felt more connected to what humanity truly meant. The war against was just beginning. And for the first time in 50,000 years, the darkness had reason to be afraid.